Hey everyone, and welcome back to the final video for the collaboration, part 3 of 3. It's been super fun so far getting to work on this box and to get to talk with 12 Gun Sports back and forth and send him updates. And hopefully this weekend I will be delivering this to him. As you can see, I've taken all the tape off, the glue up. It went fairly good. There's a few gaps, but all in all, the seam is, once it's sanded, it's almost probably unnoticeable. What I have to do next is, as you can see, there's some missing end caps. And what I went ahead and did is I went ahead and glued up the final two pieces, just using the same technique that I did from previous videos. I believe it was part 1 of this collaboration. And what I did to get this, because I only had 2 pieces left of these strips, and as you can see, I just measured what was necessary and then cut it to fit. And I will have no excess really at all, aside from these little cut off pieces from when I left these long. So it turned out just perfect as far as material wise. So to get this right here, all I'm gonna do is put this up just like that, and I will trace the inside lip to cut on. As you can see, the ledge that I created with the router plane turned out quite nice. It all matched up perfectly. So I'm gonna put it right up to the edge. Actually, not. I'm gonna leave it a hair big because I can always take material off. And I'm literally just gonna take my pencil and mark it. And that's that. Okay, so I've got a side right here, and what I'm gonna do is literally just take my handsaw and cut that line. So the teeth are a bit fine for that cut, so I'm gonna bump it up to a bigger saw and see if that cuts better. Got a nice straight edge. And I can just plop that up there and it's perfect. And what I actually did is I held my saw not quite square. I'll see if I can show that. Okay, maybe it was exactly square. So I didn't mean to do it that dead on, but What I would have liked to have done is actually tilted it that way so I could cut at a slight angle so it would kind of wedge itself in when it's glued in there. But, I mean, perfectly square is just fine too. So I'm going to do the other 2 lines right now. Alright, so this piece is cut. It should just pop right in. Just like that. Perfect. So I've got the 2 outside pieces that go here cut and labeled to which side they go on. But next, what I want to do is you'll see that the lid doesn't meet up just perfect. So what I'd like to do is chamfer. And as far as the latch goes, it's going to be this little piece and the thing that swings in and hooks. And so, as you can see, them being on different planes makes that impossible. So what I can do is change the angle of this face to get it significantly closer to this face, and then just kind of fudge the hardware a little bit to make it fit. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so just a quick 45 on these. It's real easy. All you got to do is just take your pencil, bottom it out to the edge that you want, which I don't want to go all the way down. I want to stop at this face. So there it is. It's going to go right here. So there's my line. Flip it around. And now I just plane to that line, and to these edges. Super simple. There's so much time that can be saved by just being able to lock your hand in to where it needs to be. And if you're curious as to how accurate it is, there's a straight edge and there's the pencil line. So it works. Alright, so I've got it kind of propped up against the box, and I've got my little block plane, so I'm just going to start planing. So you might notice that I'm not going straight across a grain, I'm actually taking a skew cut. And the reason for that is if I have my blade running across here, it's going to catch these end fibers right there, and it's going to want to blow out. And so if I skew it, because this is a better angle, if I'm going across here, but if I skew it, it's going to be able to cut those significantly easier and just leave a little, nice, just leave a little fuzz instead of a massive tear out. And so as you can see, I'm almost to the line on both sides. And so with that skew cut, is able to just push through significantly easier. Alright, there's that 45, right to the line, left of the line, just so I know where my reference is, just to kind of show you what that's going to look like. It's going to make that transition significantly smoother compared, and then when I do it to this, I'm actually going to bring this edge back as well. And so it'll just make everything just a bit more seamless, as well as really help me out when I'm mounting the hardware to it. So I'm going to do this one real quick, and we'll be right back. So I've got both chamfers done on the lid, and so now I want to do it to the box. But instead of just going the depth of this, I actually want to do it a bit further because I'm wanting to extend to accept the hardware. So that's what I'm wanting to go to. So I've got my stop line. I need to stop there, go from that corner. So it will vary on this face because I have to go deeper to reach this face, but it'll all work out just fine. So now it's just start planing. Alright, so I've established my angle right here that I need to just continue to then plane to this line right here. I'm going to do it to this one. Get my angle locked in. Alright, so I've started planing, and I realized that my little plane, this guy, is just a little too awkward bouncing between these two pieces. So I want to introduce another tool. It's this little guy. This is made by Veritas, and it is I believe a third scale of one of their low angle smoothing planes. And so it's completely functional ground flat with a PMV11 tool steel, which is great. And so I'm just going to use it to get up in here. Now I can continue on with this guy again. After many swipes of a hand plane, you can see that that edge is done, and it mates up significantly better to the box. And I've got a little bit more cleanup to do, just so there's not as much of a shadow line as you can see. But just that subtle angle makes this able to be attached on both the lid and the base. Alright, so I am all ready for the glue up. And so as you can see, I'm using green tape again instead of clamps, just because clamps don't want to seem to work with me on this project. I'm going to put a nice bead glue. Put a little bit more. I can always clean up excess, but I can't go back and put more on. So now that that is on, I'm going to do the center first, so it will center itself where it needs to be. real tight. And that's a glue up. Went significantly smoother. I've got some glue squeeze out inside. I'll go in there and clean it up after I do the side. Again, there you have it. So now I'm just going to let this dry and we'll come back and set the hinges. Alright, so it's glued up. It's actually probably if I had to pick one thing that I'm happy about as far as this box has gone, is this seam and how well it went together. Still definitely not perfect by any means, but it is definitely a lid, and it is very strong. So basically what's left, so turn this around, the front, it's been chamfered, so it's the right side. What I need to do is take these edges down a bit. So what I'll do is I'll just grab my little block plane. So what I can actually do is lay a piece of sandpaper down on it and just rub. So I've got my flat surface, got my box upside down, just sand it like that. So I'm going to do that real quick so I'm not trying to chase corners with my hand plane. Alright, so here's my sandpaper. It's on my workbench. It's a flat surface, and so you just do that until you get all smooth spots. And so you can tell if it's a low spot because it's darker. So there's a little low spot right there, and everywhere else, this corner's a little low, but everywhere else seems really good. You don't want to put a lot of pressure down, because what it'll do is chatter and make a horrible noise. You really just want to let the sandpaper do the work anyways. And so a few more goes at that, and it'll be just square as can be. Alright, so here's the front of the box. The gaps are significantly better in the front, or I guess they're not there anymore for the most part. There's a little bit of a gap right here from where it's not 100% square, but what I did really appreciate is that when I set this on here, I mean, it sits so flush. You can't even feel the transition when it's completely sat on it just right. Like it is just really nice. And so I'm sure I'll mess that up as soon as I put hinges on it, but hopefully I'll be able to keep that. So next are the hinges. So first, what I want to do is lay out my hinges. And so I'm just going to butt them up to these two things. And I'll mark my center. And the good thing about mahogany is that it's soft, which is a plus and a minus, but in this case it's a plus that I don't have to come in with the awl and leave a divot for my drill bit to follow. I can just use my pencil lead. So that is that. So I've got my marks for the hinges. Next is to pre-drill the holes. So now, the fun part is finding a screwdriver that will drive these teeny tiny little things of a screw. Alright, so I have my tip. It does fit this, barely. But I want to kind of talk about something that people tend to forget, aside from not pre-drilling holes, is waxing your screws. And so this is a little disc from a wax melt. If you live in an apartment and you can't have candles, or just prefer this over a candle, these are perfect because when they run out of scent, the wax doesn't burn, just loses its flavor. And so what I like to do is just get a little bit on the threads. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then that will prevent any threat of breaking the head off of the screw. It's not going to mess up the wood any. It's just, that's what it's going to be. So just keep on doing that. So if you're wondering, well, I've never used wax before, so why should I start? If you've ever felt the heat of a screw as you pull it out of wood, you'll know why less friction is better and why screw heads can break off, especially when you're using brass. These ones aren't as particular, especially since there's just about nothing for them to grab onto. That's where I want it. But what that did is actually pull it back just a little bit. I taped it up and it's got this tiny little crack now. So what I think I'm going to do, and as you can see it's got a gap here, I could re-drill the holes, drop it down, or what I think I'm going to do is actually inlay the hinges so they'll sit flush against the wood. And what it should do is close this gap, because I'll drop it down an eighth of an inch, and it should also push the lid forward to cover this gap. So I'm going to take all this off and lay it out and go from there. So I've got the hinges laid out, just traced it with a pencil. So what I'm going to do is take my chisel, I'm going to place it on that line, just lightly score it. The curve's a little tricky. So that's that. So now I'm just going to take my chisel, just get it started. Slowly, just evenly take material away. So the hinges are in. They sit flush to the back, the gap's closed, and I taped the box lid to keep it in the right spot while I did it. And there's a little gap here, and what it is the box is not entirely square, so there's this little gap right there. But what I'm hoping to do is put the latch here, and when you latch it, it'll kind of lock it in place and actually keep some tension on it. The other option is to put something back there, like a spacer, just to close the gap. So the last thing to do is to lay out for the latch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure it. It is 3 1/4. If I do that, makes that my center. Just check. Perfect. So originally the dilemma was that the two faces caused the problem because the swivel that goes into this sticks out. And so what my plan is to set this and find where that latch needs to go. And just kind of manipulate the curve to fit the entire thing. So there's my center. Got my 2 screw holes. So the bottom part of the latch is on. What I did is I set this up where it needs to go, roughly, and kind of bent it at the angle where it needs to go. So it actually works really well. So I've put this on and manipulated it to where it just locks right into place. And that is it for the box. The hinges are on, everything is attached, and that's a wrap. I want to kind of zoom back out after I clean up all my mess and just talk about the tools that I used. But thanks for your patience and thanks for watching. When we come back, this tabletop will be clean and I'll have all the tools that I used on the box and kind of talk about why I used them. Alright, that is it for this project. As you can see in front of me, the box is complete and is ready to go to its owner. And you can probably also see my table is completely full with tools. And I want to do an overhead shot and just kind of talk about all of the tools that actually came in contact with the box. As you can see, there's a ton of clamps which were required for the glue ups, and I will always say that there are never enough clamps that you can have in your lifetime. Another thing is hand saws and hand planes. The hand saws, a good saw, really came in handy because I was able to cut square edges right off the bat and not have to do a lot of work. Another thing is a good block plane. If I could recommend 3 tools, it would be a good hand saw, a good block plane, and a chisel. That's essentially all I really needed to use. So here's the hand saw, just a gent style saw is always just a good start if you're wanting to get into woodworking. Again, a good chisel. This is the Stanley Sweetheart series, the new one, and I'll do a video on that later, but that could replace so many things that I used. along with this Veritas apron plane, and that was my first video. And again, it was just a pleasure to use the whole time. And I know this took a really long time, so I actually have a little something for Danny when I deliver it to him. It should be this Saturday. And so I just want to say thank you again for giving me the opportunity and for all y'all's patience in watching these long videos. If you enjoyed it, as always, hit a thumbs up at the end and subscribe if you're not. I really appreciate it. And leave in the comments below what you think, the processes that I did. If you have another way of doing things, please let me know. I'm still obviously learning, and I don't want to stop learning. So thanks, and see you next video.